Ever since the establishment of the company around 45 years ago, Apple has been regarded as one of the leading forces in the technological industry, which is especially true when it comes to both smartphones and personal computers. And with the company logo being recognized all across the globe, there's no doubt Apple has been able to make a name for itself. But how does a company like Apple make the jump from second most valuable company in the world to first? Well, whether you consider yourself to be a fan of its merchandise or just want to know more about the workings of the billion-dollar company, you've come to the right place, as we're about to take a look at why Apple is so successful and what could make it even better. So strap yourselves in and get ready to dive right in, as things are about to get informative. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos that we post. A little more about Apple. Apple Incorporated was founded on the 1st of April, 1976 by Steve Wozniak, Ronald Wayne, and Steve Jobs. And although this might have seemed to many back then like an April Fool's joke, the general public had no idea just how influential these men would one day become. Jobs took on the role of being the face of the company, with his charisma and smarts being the driving force behind Apple making a name for itself in the technological industry of the 70s. At this stage, the company was simply being advertised as the Apple Computer Company and had only one product, being the Apple I, which was designed in its entirety by Steve Wozniak. The company did relatively well with the Apple I and some of its later products, but it was the 1984 release of the Macintosh which allowed the company to become one of the leaders of the industry. The commercial for the Macintosh, or Mac as it was later known, was called a masterpiece by the news network CNN and is to this day considered to be one of the greatest and most influential television commercials of all time. Building off of the hype created by a slither of smart marketing, Apple slowly but surely became what we now know them as, renaming the company as Apple Incorporated and making it to the second spot on the list of the world's most valuable companies. As far as we can see, there are a few reasons why Apple as a company is so successful. So let's just dive right into them and then take things from there. 1. Being ahead of the curve. In order for any company to be successful, it has to establish itself as being ahead of the curve. Simply put, this means the company has to take a look at the market and pinpoint gaps that it can fill. By the creation and sale of products that aren't being sold by competitors, customers have no choice but to turn to that company and do business with them. And say what you want about Apple, but the company has always been ahead of the curve, especially when it comes to the software of its Macs, which is still considered to be antiviral by nature. In fact, according to Apple, it has a policy of being at least 2 years ahead of the curve and makes extensive use of market research to ensure that the company stays there. By doing the necessary market research and pinpointing the type of products and applications that the public might turn to in a few years, Apple was able to create a device like the iPhone before competitors like Motorola and Samsung were able to respond with smartphones of their own. If you really think about it, competing companies were only really able to come out with similar working smartphones in 2009 and 2010 respectively, which was a full 2 to 3 years after the iPhone rose to success in 2007. So this is clearly one of the principles that sets Apple apart from other companies in the sector and allowed them to build up a following of wealthy patrons. It must, however, be said that competing companies in the smartphone industry have now sufficiently caught up to Apple, who appear to have hit a bit of a standstill when it comes to the creation of new ideas. The thought around the world is that while the new iPhone might look different to its older model, this doesn't mean that it's any better. In fact, some would say that competing companies have actually been putting out better devices at much cheaper prices, which has caused the sale of iPhones to drop over the past couple of years. So, in order for Apple Incorporated to become the world's most valuable company once more, it needs to discover another gap in the market and fill it before its competitors can do the same. This is easier said than done though, but since Apple has an estimated net worth of around $2.213 billion right now, there's no doubt that they have the money to invest in innovative ideas. So get to thinking, Apple. 2. Always improving its branding. Ever since the Macintosh was first introduced by the company, the public started to see Apple as the type of business that valued technological advancement. It wasn't the type of company that simply released a new version of a product for the sake of it, as each new version came packed with some or other technological improvement that the previous model lacked. In other words, Apple was considered to be a company that cared, always striving to make its products better than not only their competitors' products, but their previously released devices as well. Apple. And since people wanted nothing more than to be the owners of the latest and greatest in technological advancement, they would flock to Apple stores and stay in line for hours at a time just so that they could get their hands on the latest iPhone. The company also took a stance that no other company in the sector did. Rather than just working on the improvement of its products, the company also started to work on the improvements of its branding. This was to a certain extent possible because of the talents of Steve Jobs, who did his best to create not just patrons of the company, but followers of the products. By branding Apple as the dynamic force that nobody can afford to miss out on, the company developed a somewhat cult following, with people doing anything to get their hands on the latest in the product line. People who no longer had the newest iPhone felt embarrassed, causing them to replace their phone with another before their contracts were even up. And since the newest model was already in development just as the previous model had launched, a vicious cycle was created which to this day still operates. The technological advancement of the company has, however, come to a bit of a standstill at the moment. This actually happened a few years ago with Apple turning to various color schemes to try and drum up iPhone sales. And while the introduction of a rose gold model might have worked for a year or so, the development of new iPhones has to a certain extent become stale. The company is, after all, no longer viewed as being a company that doesn't simply release a new model for the sake of it. And while the cult following of the brand remains intact, the behavior of Apple doesn't seem to be hooking any new customers to the brand. To truly become the most valuable company in the world, once more, Apple has to make a plan to get themselves to where they were back in the day. And to do this, the company itself needs to undergo a mind change of sorts, concentrating on more innovation and less on simply releasing a new model that is a clone of the previous one. 3. Always bringing quality to customers. The idea of Apple Incorporated has always been summarized by the mantra of beauty in simplicity, which is to a large extent what made its products so beloved by the public. Sure, there was a bit of a learning curve to get a handle on the operating system, but once you did, you could easily sync that system with every other Apple product you had to create a joined system of simple information sharing. This is why fans of the brand love to have everything that Apple ends up releasing. Where adding more and more products to a system often makes that system more complicated to use, the opposite can be said when it comes to Apple and its products. It must also be said that the sleek, trademark design of the company's products always gave off a feeling of wealth, and since everyone in the world wants to at least feel wealthy, Apple as a product line allowed them to feel this way. And while you may find a customer of Apple complaining about the lack of a jack or at the expense of the product, you will never find that customer complaining about the overall quality of the product. As such, Apple has become synonymous with other companies that you can trust. To ensure this, the company actually has each and every new product tested hundreds of times by a number of experts before it is approved for mass production and launching. In order to become the world's most valuable company, Apple Incorporated simply needs to keep up this rigorous process. As of right now, the only reason to buy an iPhone is to feel free from typical smartphone problems such as applications crashing, malware attacks, and frequent pop-ups when online. Simply put, Apple products are designed with quality in mind when it comes to both hardware and software, and this should never change. 4. The overall customer experience. Apple, as a brand, has always been a brand of the wealthy. Take one look at its catalog and you'll be surprised at just how expensive each and every one of its gadgets are. The newest stand for the Mac, for example, caused quite a controversy a few years ago when it was released to the public at a price of over $1,000, which was crazy considering how it was nothing more than a piece of metal. The reason why Apple has been able to up their prices and keep their followers around, though, isn't necessarily about the products they sell, but, in our opinion, has more to do with the services the company offers. Anyone who has ever owned an iPhone or Mac will tell you that the customer service of Apple is unparalleled by its competitors. If you have a problem that you need fixed, all you need to do is talk to one of the geniuses and you're sure to have the issue sorted in next to no time at all. And if Apple continues this service of theirs, there's no way they won't make it to #1 spot again. What do you think about Apple becoming the most valuable company in the world? Let us know about it in the comment section below.